Okay, so we are day 348. I think so. Yeah, 348 means there's 17 days left to go from this 365-day live, which is crazy. And right now I'm in my car, decided to do the IG live from here. It's dumping, it's snowing like crazy, and it was like really interesting because like I was at the coffee shop with a client doing a session, and we get out and we're chatting, and it's like overcast, nothing, and then I just go to the grocery store, pick up some stuff that he needed, and I come out and I'm like, it's just coming down. It's so much snow. So I'm pretty sure those people who are snowboarding and skiing will be very happy tomorrow because it's coming down now, which means tomorrow will be a powder day. But I don't have a pass, so it's okay. I'll get one next year. But I do want to talk about, it's really interesting. I know I'm kind of been talking a lot about this theme lately, but it's just every time I navigate through my own inner work of what I'm going through, it's something that I like to relate to you. It's what I talk about. It's what I focus on. And because it's kind of like when I'm in that moment of like my own inner healing, it's like I'm having these big realizations and I'm like, okay, how can I share this with the world? Like, how can I really share this with all of you to let you know like what my insights are and what my contemplation, my reflection of life in itself. And it is a lot around right now creating stories and narratives. Like that is like such a big theme and like big realizations that I'm having around this, because we create a story about everything. We create a story and a narrative about everything. And it's almost like it is in a way an assumption. And you know what they always say, like, no, don't assume about other people, don't assume about certain things. But creating stories and narratives about other people and situations is an assumption, because the stories and the narratives that we create is not always true. Like sometimes it could be. I'm not going to disregard that, but it's not always true. Or maybe part of it is true. And so we tend to, like, what ends up happening is that something happens, right? A situation happens. And we create the story around it based on our previous experiences, based on what we've experienced so far. But we don't actually get all the facts to the story, because we already created this assumption in our mind of what this story is all about from what we know. Right? From what we know, like in our reality, from what we know that is presented to us, from what we know from our past, you know, like, oh, we've been in this relationship with this person. And when, you know, like this person said something, that's how that person reacted. So now that I'm in this new situation with this other person, how I react and what I do and how they react to what I do, it's going to be like the same. But it's not. It's all an assumption. It's an assumption, and you're putting a category or a story on this situation and the person itself from something else. But this person's completely different. This situation's completely different, and it's not the same. And so we create these stories, and it's like, well, why? I always think, I'm like, why do we create the stories, right? Why do we get in our heads and we make all these assumptions about people and situations where most of the time they could be false, right? How many times have you been wrong about something? How many times have you reacted to a situation and 10 days later or a month later, you find out this other side to a story and you're like, oh, yeah, I was wrong. I thought XYZ. Or how many times you met someone and you had this one idea of them, of who they are. But then the more you got to know them, you realize that first idea of them is not at all who they are. we do this a lot. And we do this because I think it's that part of us that is uncomfortable with that unknown and is uncomfortable with that uncertainty, that our mind wants to create a story or narrative to understand the situation, to understand the person, instead of sitting in the discomfort of the unknown and sitting and in that place of not understanding what's happening. It's like, oh, let me create a narrative because it gives me something to control. It gives me something to focus on. But then we're creating all these assumptions. We're creating all these assumptions about one another that may or may not be true. And how many times have you been on that other side of the coin where you felt misunderstood, where you felt like someone made an assumption about you that was not true? So what if, instead of putting all these stories around these situations and putting all these stories around these people, what if we take the stories away? What if we take it all away? What if we literally break it all down and remove it all? How does that feel in your body? How does that feel in your soul? For me, it feels lighter. It feels lighter because there's no emotion attached to the story because there is no story. And the truth and the everything that you want to know within all that, within the situation, within the person, may reveal itself in time and may not. So what if you let that all go? What if you let that story go? What if you just break it apart and take it all away? And that the situation is what it is. Nothing more, nothing less. So, some food for thought for today's live. Let me know what you think. And that is it. So now we got 17 days to go? I don't know. I'm losing track. Basically, I'm almost at my 365. It's exciting. Okay. I will speak to you all tomorrow.